When a duke is declared dead, who dares to say his heart can still be claimed? What if the coldest man in England, feared, untouchable, only awakens for the one girl no one ever sees? They called it over after the duel. The doctors gave up. The house began to mourn. So tell me, why did a single maid refuse to let him go? And why, the moment she clung to his chest, tears soaking silk and skin, did his heartbeat return, as if it recognized her? Was it a miracle, or a secret powerful enough to start a war among nobles? And if he opens his eyes, who will he punish first? And who will he protect at any cost? If you love dark Regency romance, forbidden devotion, and ruthless aristocratic drama, hit subscribe now. And don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who can't resist a love that defies the entire world. London wore its wealth the way it wore its fog, thick, unquestioned, and suffocating. The morning air tasted of damp stone and coal smoke, threaded with the faint sweetness of expensive perfume drifting from passing carriages. Behind iron gates and trimmed hedges, the city's true rulers spoke softly and struck hard, trading smiles the way others traded threats. Titles were currency. Reputation was blood. At Hawthorne House, the Duke of Ashford was the unspoken law. His name, Simon, did not need to be raised. It travelled on its own, sliding through drawing rooms and clubs like a blade under velvet. Men praised his restraint as virtue. Women called it cruelty with better manners. Those who owed him anything, money, silence, mercy, learned the same lesson. The Duke's favour was warmer than most fires, and just as dangerous. Jane moved through his world as if she belonged to none of it. A maid was meant to be an absence, quiet steps, lowered eyes, hands that served and vanished. But Jane's silence was not submission. It was discipline. She knew how to carry a tray without trembling, how to fold silk without leaving a crease, how to stand in a room full of lions and refuse to smell her own fear. The scent of starch clung to her sleeves, clean and sharp, yet beneath it lived the more stubborn things: ink on her fingertips from stolen minutes with books, bruised knuckles from learning to defend herself when no one was watching, and a pride that never asked permission to exist. Today, the household whispered like a nervous choir. Words broke apart in corridors and reformed in corners. Duel, insult, dawn. In the servants' hall, it was spoken as tragedy. Upstairs, among polished wood and heavy drapes, it was spoken as necessity. A duke could not be publicly challenged without answering. He could not be seen to forgive what others would call weakness. And so the world demanded spectacle. 2 men, 1 field, a single shot to settle what pride could not. Jane heard it all, and something in her went cold with rage rather than fear. The Duke would walk into death as if it were another room he owned. He would do it with that expression. Perfect, distant, untouchable, while everyone around him pretended their concern was noble, not hungry. She was tightening the cuffs of his dark coat when he entered the dressing room, the scent of leather and winter clinging to him. Simon Hawthorne did not look like a man preparing to bleed. He looked like certainty made flesh, tall, immaculate, carved from patience and ice. His gaze swept over her hands, precise and impersonal, until it stalled, just for a breath, on her face. Jane did not curtsy. She did not smile. She met his eyes as if she had a right to. For a moment, the air seemed to thicken. He could have dismissed her with a word. He could have reminded her of distance, of station, of the invisible chains this house expected her to kiss. Instead, his voice came quiet, edged. "You're staring." "I'm measuring," Jane replied, fingers still on his sleeve. "They say you never lose." His mouth barely moved, the ghost of something that wasn't amusement. "And if I did, then the city would learn what it truly worships," she said. "Not honor, not courage, just the comfort of watching someone else fall." The words should have been too bold. A maid did not speak to a duke like that. Yet Simon did not punish her. His eyes sharpened, as if her defiance had struck a place under the armor. "You presume too much," he murmured. Jane's grip tightened once, just enough to wrinkle the fine cloth. "And you presume too little," she said. "You think your name will protect you from consequences, but it won't protect anyone who loves you." Silence. A slow blink. The Duke's jaw flexed, as though he hated that her sentence had landed cleanly. He turned to leave, the movement controlled, regal, until his hand paused on the door. "Jane," he said, tasting her name like a violation. Her heart did not leap. It braced. He did not look back. "Keep your eyes where they belong." Jane's voice was soft, unyielding. "I do." When he was gone, she stood alone among polished mirrors and folded silk, and the house seemed to hold its breath with her. On the chair lay his gloves, black and spotless. Beneath them, partly hidden, was a sealed letter, thick paper, wax stamped with a crest she knew too well. Jane slid it free. The seal was unbroken, but the name written on the front made her blood go hot and cold at once. Not hers. And yet, somehow, it felt like a warning meant only for her. The letter weighed nothing, yet it sat in Jane's palm like a coin minted from sin. She did not break the seal, not because she respected it, but because she understood power. Words could be weapons, and weapons were useless if revealed too soon. She slid it back beneath the gloves exactly as she had found it, the wax crest facing downward like a buried confession, and left the room with her face arranged into calm. All evening, Hawthorne House moved with the muted precision of a funeral pretending to be a routine. Polished silver clinked softly against porcelain, and candles burned with a steady, patient cruelty. Somewhere beyond the walls, London laughed and drank as if men did not die for pride at dawn. Inside, even the fireplaces seemed to hold their heat closer, as though warmth might be rationed. Simon dined alone. He always did on nights when the world demanded violence from him. The staff knew not to fill the silence with questions. Yet silence did not mean peace. It meant discipline, the kind of discipline that turned living into strategy. Jane served with the others until she found herself at his right shoulder, pouring wine that smelled of dark fruit and old oak. His hand steadied the glass without looking at her. His ring caught the candlelight, a cold flash of authority. "You heard the servants," he said, voice low enough that it could have been imagined. "Their fear has a loud tongue." Jane kept her pouring steady. "Fear is honest. It doesn't wear a title." His gaze lifted at last, grey, sharp, unreadable, until the smallest crack of irritation appeared, as if honesty offended him more than insult. "You think I should refuse," he said. "I think you enjoy pretending you don't care what happens," Jane replied. "It's a luxury, to act immortal." The corner of his mouth tightened. "And you?" he asked. "What luxury do you allow yourself?" Jane set the bottle down with controlled care. "None," she said. "That's why I can see you clearly." For a moment he studied her, as if he were deciding whether she was dangerous. Then he looked away, the mask returning, perfect and sealed. "Go," he told her. "Sleep." Jane almost laughed. "You mistake me for someone who can—" She left before he could answer, but the house did not let her escape. In the servants' corridor, men spoke in urgent murmurs. The carriage would leave before sunrise. The seconds had been chosen. The pistols were already prepared. Someone said the opponent's name with distaste, as if it carried infection. Jane listened, memorizing each detail the way one memorizes a path out of a burning room. When the hour finally came, the night had not softened into morning. It had simply thinned into a colder darkness. The air tasted of wet earth and iron, and every breath felt like it scraped the lungs. Jane should have remained behind. A maid did not witness a duke's private violence, but Jane had never understood rules that existed only to keep truth unseen. She followed at a distance, Steps quiet, heart loud. Men gathered in fine coats that smelled of soap and arrogance, their voices restrained and hungry. The world that called itself civilized formed a circle, not to stop what was happening, but to sanctify it. Simon stood at its center like a monument to control. His face was calm, but Jane saw the tension at his jaw, the measured way he inhaled, as though he were locking something inside himself. His opponent smiled too easily, too practiced, a man who treated destruction as entertainment. A word was spoken. A pistol raised. Time narrowed to a single point. Jane's fingers curled in her skirt until her nails bit skin. She did not pray. She did not plead. She burned, silent and furious, as if rage could bend the world. The shot cracked the air like a whip. Simon staggered, not dramatically, not for show, just enough for the truth to slip through. His hand flew to his chest. The expensive cloth darkened. The circle of men shifted, startled not by death, but by the inconvenience of it. And as Simon began to fall, his eyes found Jane. Not the crowd, not the rules, her. As if, in that final stolen heartbeat, he had remembered something he was never supposed to want. They carried him as if he were still untouchable, as if hands could offend a duke's dignity even while blood abandoned him. Coats were stripped off, pressed to the wound, ruined without anyone daring to complain. The men who had formed a circle of honor now scattered like guilty birds, speaking in tight, rehearsed phrases. Accident, necessity, unfortunate outcome, anything but the simpler word, consequence. Jane moved through them without permission. Someone reached for her arm, but she twisted away, not graceful, not polite, certain. The smell of gunpowder clung to everything, harsh and bitter, and beneath it rose the copper sting of fresh blood, warm in the cold air. Simon's breath came thin, each inhale a reluctant bargain. His eyelids fluttered as if he were trying to keep hold of the world by force of will alone. "Don't you dare," Jane whispered, close enough that her words could touch him. It was not a plea. It was an order, the kind a desperate heart gives when it refuses to accept any authority but its own. The carriage ride back to Hawthorne House felt endless, the wheels biting into wet streets, the city's fog swallowing sound and light alike. Inside, lamplight shook with every jolt, and Simon's skin had gone pale beneath the shadows of pain. A man across from Jane kept staring at the blood soaking through cloth, as if watching it might teach him how to stop it. Another murmured about surgeons, about prayers, about the inevitability of a bullet placed too well. Jane listened, jaw clenched. Inevitability was a word used by people who benefited from surrender. When the gates opened, the mansion received them like a mouth that had been waiting. Warmth rushed out, scented with beeswax and smoke, but it could not soften the sharp panic that spread through the halls. Orders snapped, footsteps multiplied, basins were filled, sheets torn, fires stoked high enough to lick the cold away. A doctor was summoned, then another, then a third. Men with careful voices and confident hands that faltered when faced with a duke's mortality. Simon was laid out beneath heavy linens, the fine fabric stained, the gold thread made obscene by the darkness blooming across it. The room swelled with murmurs, pulse, pressure, shock, dangerous. Jane stood at the edge until someone tried to move her back. "Out!" the steward hissed, as if her presence were dirt on polished floors. "This is not your place." Jane turned her head slowly. Her eyes did not widen, they narrowed. "Neither is death," she said, "yet you've invited it in." The steward's face tightened with outrage, but outrage required time, and Simon did not have any. A doctor pushed past, sleeves rolled, hands already red. The sound of instruments against porcelain was crisp and merciless. A cloth was pressed to Simon's chest. The air filled with the sharp bite of spirits and the faint sweetness of laudanum. Someone held his shoulders as if restraint could anchor him to life. For a moment, Simon's eyes opened again, distant, unfocused, searching. Jane stepped closer without thinking, drawn by something that felt older than fear. His gaze snagged on her, and the corner of his mouth moved, a fraction, as if he meant to speak her name and had forgotten how. Then the strength drained out of him like water from a cracked glass. His chest rose once, twice, shallow, stubborn, then slowed. The room held its breath. A doctor leaned in, listening, waiting, frowning as though offended by the body's refusal to obey. "His heart is failing," one of them said quietly, and quiet was worse than shouting. Jane felt the words strike like a physical blow. Around her, the house did what it always did in crisis. It reached for rules, curtains drawn, doors closed, voices lowered, panic forced into manners. And in the middle of that controlled suffocation, Simon lay still enough to look already claimed. "Coma," the doctor finally pronounced, as if naming it made it safer. "If he wakes at all." He did not finish. Jane stared at the Duke's motionless face, at the lash-shadowed eyes that had once looked through everyone, at the mouth that had tasted her name like warning. The air smelled of medicine and smoke and something darker, loss gathering its coat at the door. Outside the room, the first whispers of succession began. Inside, Jane stood rigid, refusing to be pushed away, while the clock ticked on with cruel patience, counting down toward a dawn that might not include him. The second day arrived without sunrise, only a paler shade of grey pressed against the windows like a hand that would not let go. In the Duke's chamber, the air had grown heavy with tinctures and wilted flowers, lavender trying to pretend it could outvote blood. Candles burned even at noon, their smoke threading the ceiling in thin, bitter ribbons. The clocks kept speaking, steady and indifferent, as if time were merely another servant taking orders. Doctors came in clean coats and confident voices and left with slower steps. They spoke in careful fragments, swelling, shock, unresponsive. They touched Simon's wrist as though a title might pulse beneath the skin. They lifted his eyelids, frowned at the blankness behind them, and exchanged glances that pretended to be professional instead of afraid. A duke was not meant to be helpless. A duke was not meant to be silent. Jane was kept out at first. The steward stationed a footman near the door, as if muscle could guard death away. But Jane learned the patterns of a household in crisis, the way others learned prayers. She knew who grew careless when tired, who left keys where they should not, who spoke too freely when their pride demanded an audience. She moved where she was not wanted, quiet as a knife drawn slowly. In the corridor outside the chamber, the aristocracy gathered in shifting clusters, perfumed and polished, their grief stitched from etiquette. Words floated like cold petals. Inheritance, trustees, next of kin. A cousin arrived with eyes too bright, condolences too rehearsed. A family solicitor came with papers already prepared, as if hope were an inconvenience that delayed business. Their sympathy tasted like sugar hiding rot. Jane watched them and felt something fierce rise in her throat. Not sorrow, suspicion. These people mourned in a way that made room for celebration. When she tried to pass the guard, the footman blocked her with a stiff arm. "Orders," he said, chin lifted. Jane looked at the arm as if it were a childish threat. "Move," she replied. He hesitated, just a fraction. Servants understood rank, but they also understood will. Jane's will did not bend. She stepped closer until the footman was forced to meet her eyes, and in them he found no pleading, no softness to exploit. "You can stand there," she said quietly, "or you can later explain why you helped bury a living man." He swallowed, pride warred with fear. Fear won. Inside, the physicians conferred at the bedside, voices low. One rubbed his fingers together as if trying to erase the feel of failure from his skin. "We have done what can be done," the eldest said at last. "If there is no change by morning, we must speak plainly." The solicitor's voice slid in, smooth and eager. "Plainly meaning?" The doctor's pause was the cruelest sound in the room. "We will declare him beyond recovery." A sentence delivered like mercy. Jane felt her body go utterly still. Her hands clenched, not in hysteria but in restraint. She could not afford to shatter here, among people who would call her emotion vulgar. The cousins sighed, a performance of sorrow. Tragic. But we must be practical. Practical. The word landed like mud on a tombstone. Jane stepped forward before she could be stopped. "He is not a ledger entry," she said. Several heads turned sharply, affronted by the audacity of being addressed by someone so low. The cousin's gaze swept her with mild disgust. "And you are?" "A witness," Jane answered, "to how quickly you begin dividing a man you claim to respect." The steward lunged in, face flushing. "That is enough. Remove her." A hand seized Jane's elbow. She twisted free with a snap of movement that made the man stumble. Her voice stayed level, but it cut. "You want quiet, because quiet makes this easier," she said. "But easy is not the same as right." The eldest doctor's eyes flickered. Annoyance, discomfort, and something close to shame. "Miss, your devotion is—" "Don't," Jane interrupted, colder now. "Don't dress surrender in polite words." The steward's mouth thinned. "You will leave this house tonight," he hissed. The Duke's affairs require discretion. Jane stared at him as if he had announced his own execution. "Discretion," she repeated softly. "Or convenience." No one answered. They did not need to. The corridor filled again with murmurs, plans, arrangements, the soft rustle of silk like wings folding over a corpse. Later, in the dim hush of the servants' passage, Jane saw the steward pause to lock the Duke's chamber. The key flashed briefly against his belt, small, brass, ordinary, the kind of object a powerful house would never notice. Jane noticed, and she began to count the steps between her room and the Duke's door as if she were measuring the distance between surrender and sin. Night did not fall so much as it thickened, pressing itself into the corridors until even the chandeliers seemed reluctant to shine. Hawthorne House slept uneasily, like a beast with a thorn in its paw. Somewhere, a distant door sighed on its hinges. Somewhere else, coal shifted in a grate with a soft, settling crackle. The air tasted of wax and ash and the faint, lingering sting of spirits used too often. Jane waited until the household's breathing changed, until footsteps became rarer, until voices dulled into murmurs behind closed doors, until the grand rooms surrendered to shadow and secrecy. She did not pace. She did not wring her hands. She sat on the edge of stillness, listening, counting, memorizing. Fear tried to speak in her chest, but she did not give it a tongue. When the steward finally passed through the servants' passage, his boots struck the floor with the arrogance of a man who believed he owned every threshold. The key at his belt flashed once as he adjusted his coat, a small glint of brass against black cloth. He stopped near the pantry door, grumbling to himself about troublesome girls and inconvenient devotion, and reached for a decanter as if drink could restore his authority. Jane moved behind him like a thought he had failed to have. Her hand was quick, precise, and utterly without apology. The key slipped free with a faint, metallic whisper, so light it could have been imagined. The steward did not turn. Pride made men deaf. Jane did not run. Running belonged to the guilty, and she refused to feel guilty for wanting a man to live. She walked with the measured calm of someone meant to be unseen, the key hidden in her palm, warm now from her skin. The corridor upstairs was colder, the draughts sharper, carrying the ghost of winter through the cracks of old stone. The portraits along the walls watched with painted eyes, dukes and ladies who had survived scandal, war, and betrayal. yet would have called her love an offence. At the Duke's door, she paused, not to hesitate, but to steady the rage that trembled beneath her ribs. The lock accepted the key as if it had been waiting for her. The click was soft, final, intimate. Inside, the room held a different kind of silence, thicker, weighted, as though sound had been ordered to kneel. The scent of medicine clung to the linens, sharp and medicinal, but beneath it lingered Simon's presence. Leather, smoke, the faint bitterness of expensive cologne that could not hide the fact he was human. He lay unmoving, his face too calm, too proud even in helplessness, as if he were simply refusing to grant anyone the satisfaction of watching him struggle. Jane approached the bed. Candlelight painted his skin in warm gold that did not belong to death. She looked at his chest, willing it to rise with anger alone. "You're an arrogant bastard," she whispered, voice steady. "You take bullets like they're invitations, and you think that makes you brave." Her fingers touched the fabric near his collarbone. The warmth there was real. It infuriated her, this cruel proof that he was still here, trapped behind closed eyes while vultures measured his coffin. "You told me to keep my eyes where they belong," she murmured. "This is where they belong. Here, where you can't hide behind a title." Jane leaned down until her breath brushed his skin. Then she pressed her cheek to his chest, not delicately, but with the desperate firmness of someone trying to pin a soul to its body. She listened for life. She listened for defiance. She listened for anything that proved the world was wrong to give up. Her throat tightened, not with weakness, but with fury that a house full of powerful people could do nothing but whisper and wait. A tear slipped free anyway, hot against the cool cloth, and she hated it. Hated that her body betrayed how much she wanted him. "Come back," she said, and the words cracked like a command. "If you die, I will never forgive you. Do you hear me? I won't." For a moment, the only answer was the slow tick of the clock and the soft burn of candle wicks. Jane tightened her hold, as if sheer will could drag him across the dark. Then the floorboard behind her gave a small, unmistakable creak. The creak behind her was small, but it shattered the room's fragile illusion of privacy. Jane did not spring away. She did not smooth her hair or scramble for excuses. She lifted her head slowly, as if she were the one who had been disturbed, not the one trespassing. A voice cut through the candle-warm hush, sharp with disbelief. What in God's name? It was Lady Bramwell, a distant relation with the kind of moral certainty that grew best in rooms untouched by hardship. Jane recognized the perfume before the face, powdered violet and cold superiority. The lady's breath hitched, then hardened into outrage. "A maid!" Lady Bramwell spat, each syllable heavy with disgust. "On the Duke's bed!" Jane rose in one controlled motion, placing herself between Simon and the intruder like a blade drawn without flourish. "He's alive," she said. "Try saying that as loudly as you're saying my sin." Lady Bramwell's eyes flashed. "Alive. He is a corpse that hasn't been informed of its duty. And you are fouling the dignity of this house." Jane's mouth curled, not with humor, but with something feral. "Dignity," she echoed. "You mean silence. You mean distance. You mean letting him die politely so you can inherit without stains on your gloves." The accusation landed. Lady Bramwell flinched as if struck, then recovered with a brittle smile. "How dare you? You are nothing." Jane stepped closer, gaze unwavering. "Nothing is what you call people, so you don't have to feel what you're doing to them." Lady Bramwell's composure cracked into fury. She yanked the door open and hissed for help. Footsteps answered quickly, too quickly, as if the house had been waiting for an excuse to punish Jane for refusing to remain invisible. The steward arrived first, face twisted in vindication. 2 footmen followed, heavy and obedient. Their eyes went to Jane, then to the bed, and something like scandalous delight flickered there. A downfall was entertainment in any class. "I knew it," the steward breathed, almost triumphant. dragging your filth into the Duke's chamber. Remove her." A footman reached for Jane's arm. She turned her shoulder away with a hard twist that made his hand catch only air. "Touch me again," she said softly, "and you'll learn what a maid can do when she stops being polite." The men hesitated, not because they respected her, but because her calm carried the unmistakable weight of certainty. People feared hysteria less than they feared control. Lady Bramwell lifted her chin, voice dripping righteousness. She must be dismissed. Tonight, quietly, before the newspapers sent it. "Quietly," Jane repeated, and the word tasted like poison. Everything must be quiet, so the important people can keep their hands clean. The steward stepped forward, voice lowered into a threat. "You've ruined yourself, girl." Jane's eyes did not drop. "Then ruin me later," she said. "He's still breathing." "He isn't," Lady Bramwell snapped. Jane turned, cutting her off with a single glance toward the bed. "Look," she said, and her voice was a command that did not ask permission. They looked because the room demanded it. Candlelight trembled across Simon's face, across the still line of his mouth, the aristocratic calm that had always seemed unbreakable. For a heartbeat, nothing changed. The steward's lips began to curl again, preparing a cruel remark. Then Jane saw it first. Not a miracle trumpet, not a dramatic lurch, just a faint, stubborn shiver beneath the cloth at Simon's chest, like a spark refusing to die. Jane stepped closer, palm pressed firmly over his heart as if to claim it. "There," she breathed. "There. Don't you feel that?" The footman leaned in, doubtful, hungry for certainty. Lady Bramwell's face tightened, her outrage momentarily displaced by fear. The steward's triumph faltered. Another tremor came, clearer this time, followed by a shallow hitch of breath that made the room go utterly still. Someone swore under his breath. Lady Bramwell backed half a step, whispering as if the sound might summon scandal. "Fetch the doctor." The steward stared at Jane as though she had done something unholy. "What did you do?" Jane's answer was quiet and merciless. "I refused to leave him alone." And in the fragile pause that followed, between accusation and astonishment, Simon's pulse nudged again beneath her hand, faint but undeniable, as if it recognized her touch and chose, reluctantly, to return. The doctor arrived with his breath still sharp from the cold, his hands already stained by other people's fear. He pushed past Lady Bramwell's perfume and the steward's indignation as if neither mattered, as if only the thin thread of life did. When he leaned over Simon, the room leaned with him, every title, every sin, every hungry hope. "Again," the doctor murmured, fingers at Simon's wrist. "I felt it before. Again." Jane did not move from the bedside. She kept her palm pressed to Simon's chest, steady as a vow. The beat beneath her hand was faint, but it was real, and that reality turned the air dangerous. A dead duke was an answer. A living duke was a question, and questions made men desperate. The doctor's face tightened with reluctant awe. "There is response," he admitted. "Weak, irregular, but present." Lady Bramwell exhaled, as if she had been holding her own reputation underwater. "Then we must preserve him," she said quickly, the word preserve sounding more like protect the estate than save the man. "No one must know how close you all came to celebrating," Jane cut in. Lady Bramwell's eyes snapped toward her, fury rekindling. "You will not speak." Jane's gaze stayed level, unflinching. "You will not pretend." The steward stepped forward, voice dripping control. "Enough! The Duke's survival does not change what you are." Jane turned her head slowly. "It changes everything," she said, "especially for those who wanted him silent." The words fell into the room like a dropped glass. The doctor frowned, distracted by the implication, but the others reacted too quickly. Lady Bramwell's stiff pause, the steward's blink that lasted a fraction too long. Jane noticed. She noticed everything, because she had learned long ago that power betrayed itself in tiny cracks. "Leave us," the doctor ordered, irritated. "All of you." They protested, softly, politely, then obeyed, unwilling to be seen arguing against care. When the door shut, the quiet returned, thicker now with suspicion. The doctor adjusted Simon's bedding, checked his breathing, and reached for the tray of bottles and tinctures prepared for the night. Jane's eyes sharpened. Among the familiar scents, spirit, bitter herbs, sweet opiate, there was something else. A faint wrongness, a sharper note, like almonds crushed into bitterness, like sweetness wearing a mask. "That one," Jane said, nodding toward a small vial. The doctor glanced. "A mild sedative, to keep the body calm." Jane stepped closer, her voice low. "Smell it." The doctor's brows drew together, offended by being instructed by a maid. Yet he lifted the vial and uncorked it. His nostrils flared, his expression changing in slow disbelief. "That's not—" he began. Jane took the bottle from him without asking. The glass was cool against her skin. She turned it, watching the liquid cling to the sides too thickly, too patiently. Then her gaze snagged on the wax seal at the stopper. Her blood went cold. A crest, a familiar stamp. The same mark she had seen pressed into that unopened letter beneath Simon's gloves. Jane's fingers tightened until the glass creaked faintly. The room seemed to tilt, as if the house itself had shifted its weight. "Who brought this?" she asked. The doctor's voice was cautious now. "It was set with the others, by the steward's instruction." Jane's mouth curled, not in triumph, but in a quiet, lethal understanding. Of course it was. She held the vial up as if it were evidence in a court that did not yet exist. Her mind moved fast, connecting whispers in corridors to eager condolences, to the cousin's bright eyes, to Lady Bramwell's obsession with quiet, to the word practical spoken like a blessing. Someone had not merely accepted Simon's death, someone had planned it. The doctor swallowed. "This could worsen his condition," he said, voice dropping. "It could slow the heart further. It could—" "Finish what the bullet started," Jane said softly. In the bed, Simon's breath hitched, as if the name of death had brushed his throat. Jane leaned in, her cheek close to his chest again, listening to the stubborn pulse she had dragged back from the edge. "You hear that?" she whispered. Not gentle, not pleading. "They tried to keep you under. They tried to make you convenient." Her eyes lifted toward the closed door, toward the dark hall beyond, where titles walked like wolves in silk. Jane set the vial down with care, as if placing a knife on a table before a fight. "Doctor," she said, "lock this room, and if anyone asks, tell them nothing." The doctor hesitated only a moment before nodding, fear finally learning where to kneel. Jane's hand found Simon's, and his fingers, weak, barely there, curled as if he recognized her hold. She leaned closer, voice a promise sharpened into steel. "Wake up," she whispered, "because I'm done fighting them alone." Dawn came with rain, the kind that did not cleanse but claimed, cold needles tapping the windows, steady as a verdict. The house held its breath behind locked doors and lowered voices, as if sound itself might provoke fate. In the Duke's chamber, candle wax had pooled and hardened like pale tears, and the air tasted of scorched wick, bitter herbs, and the iron quiet threat of what had almost been final. Jane did not leave the bedside. Hours had blurred into one long, tense ribbon, pulled tight until it might snap. The doctor had come and gone in cautious intervals, his authority shrinking each time Simon's body refused to behave like a corpse. The wrong vial was hidden away, sealed like evidence. And yet the danger did not vanish. It simply changed shape. A living duke invited questions, and questions invited knives. Jane sat close enough to feel the faint warmth of Simon's skin through the linen. She spoke to him in a voice meant for no one else, low, controlled, edged with something that had never been allowed to live freely in her chest. "You always looked at everyone like they were beneath you," she murmured, fingers wrapping around his hand. "So, look at me now. Prove you're not a coward hiding behind sleep." His pulse fluttered beneath her thumb, weak but insistent, like a stubborn bird beating its wings against a closed cage. Jane tightened her grip, not tenderly, but with the fierce possessiveness of someone who refused to be robbed again. Outside the door, the house shifted, soft footsteps, a whisper that died when it met silence, the subtle scrape of someone lingering too long. Jane's gaze lifted once, sharp and alert, then returned to Simon's face. "Do you hear them?" she said. "They're already measuring your absence. They're already polishing their smiles. Wake up, Simon. Wake up and make them afraid to breathe." For a moment, nothing answered but rain and the cruel patience of time. Then Simon's breath changed. It caught, shallow, uneven, as if his lungs had forgotten how to belong to him. His fingers twitched in Jane's grasp, the smallest movement, but it struck her like thunder. Jane leaned closer, eyes narrowed, watching as the stillness fractured. His eyelids trembled. Once, twice. When they opened, the grey of his eyes looked wrong at first, too distant, washed in shadow, as if he were seeing through a veil. Then focus sharpened, sudden and violent, and the room seemed to tighten around that gaze. He did not search for family. He did not reach for title or comfort. He found Jane. His stare pinned her, cold and burning at once, as if he had returned from somewhere dark, and only her presence could anchor him to the living. Jane did not flinch. She met him the way she always had, defiant, unbowed, daring him to pretend she was nothing now that he could see. Simon's throat worked. His voice came raw, a scrape of gravel forced into sound. "You!" Jane's mouth tightened. "Yes," she said. "Me." His grip strengthened, sudden enough to surprise her, fingers closing around her hand with a need that felt almost furious. The mask of ice he wore for the world was still there, but it had split along its edges, and beneath it something older bled through. Shock, recognition, the faint tremor of vulnerability he would rather die than display. He swallowed, breath shallow. His eyes cut toward the door as if he could sense the wolves beyond it. Then he looked back at Jane, and the next words left him like a blade thrown with intent. "Caldwell," he rasped. "Bring Caldwell." Jane's blood chilled at the name, because it did not sound like a question. It sounded like a sentence. The name traveled through the house faster than any servant could run. Caldwell. It slipped beneath doors and up stairwells, rode the hush of corridors, and found ears that had been trained to listen only when profit was possible. Within an hour, Hawthorne House felt less like a home and more like a court waiting for a verdict. They came in careful waves. First the physician, pale with relief and dread, then the steward with his spine stiffened by wounded pride, then Lady Bramwell wrapped in composure like armour. Behind them hovered the cousin with the two bright eyes, and a solicitor clutching papers that suddenly looked premature. No one spoke above a murmur. No one admitted fear. But fear lived there anyway, sharp as winter in the lungs. Simon lay propped against pillows, still wan from blood loss. Yet the room seemed to adjust itself to his return. His gaze moved over them without haste, a slow inventory. He did not thank them. He did not ask how long he had slept. He watched the way a man watches a locked door he intends to break. Jane stood at his side, close enough to feel the heat of his skin and the quiet tremor under it. She did not fold her hands. She did not soften her face. If anyone expected her to melt into the wallpaper now that the Duke was awake, they would be disappointed. She stayed where she was, a deliberate challenge. "Your Grace," the steward began, voice syruped with restraint, "the household is grateful." "Spare me," Simon said, and the words, though weak in volume, carried a force that silenced the room. "Where is Caldwell?" Lady Bramwell lifted her chin. This is hardly the time for... Simon's eyes cut to her, and something in them made the air tighten. It is the only time, he replied, before you all remember how to lie convincingly again. The solicitor cleared his throat, eager to redirect. Your health is fragile. We should discuss arrangements. Arrangements, Simon echoed softly, and the softness was more dangerous than anger. Yes, I'm aware you began arranging my death while I was still warm. A hush fell. It was the hush of polished people, realizing the floor beneath them might not hold. The cousin's smile twitched. Surely you don't mean... I mean exactly what I say, Simon interrupted. His gaze shifted, landing briefly on Jane, and the cold mask he wore for the room cracked a hairline. Only there, only for her, before sealing again. Then he looked back at the others, and the chill returned in full. Someone brought a vial into my chamber that did not belong there. Lady Bramwell stiffened. Absurd. The physicians did not seal it, Simon said. Not with my crest. The words struck like a slap. The room's colour changed, faces paling, eyes darting. The steward's mouth opened, then closed, as if he had swallowed his own certainty. Jane stepped forward one pace. I saw it, she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried. It smelled wrong. The stamp was wrong. And it was placed among the medicines, as if someone expected no one to look closely. The cousin's gaze snapped to her with contempt. A servant's imagination is hardly evidence. Jane's eyes held his without blinking. Then it's fortunate, she replied, that imagination didn't bring his grace back. I did. A sharp intake of breath ran through the room. Offence, scandal, the instinctive recoil of class. Simon's hand tightened faintly on the sheet, not in anger at Jane, but at them. Enough, he said, voice roughening. Caldwell will be brought here, now. The steward forced out a brittle laugh. My lord, Caldwell he is not at your command. Simon's gaze turned, slow and lethal. Everything in this house is at my command, he said, including the truth. Rain tapped the windows like impatient fingers. Somewhere in the corridor, a footstep faltered, then hurried away. The house had understood the order. And as the silence stretched, Lady Bramwell's composure began to splinter, not into tears, but into something uglier, calculation. If you drag names through the mud, she warned softly, you will drag yours with them. Simon's eyes did not waver. Then let it be mud, he said. I've had enough of clean lies. Jane felt the weight of what was coming settle into the room, an interrogation dressed as etiquette, a punishment served in porcelain cups. She did not step back. If the wolves wanted blood, they would learn she had teeth. From beyond the door came the sound of approaching footsteps, heavier, reluctant, followed by a voice protesting, then cutting off mid-breath, as if someone had gripped a collar and decided argument was no longer permitted. Caldwell was delivered to the threshold like a debt collected late. He entered with the stiffness of a man who had rehearsed innocence in front of mirrors, shoulders squared, expression offended, eyes too quick. The scent of rain clung to his coat, but beneath it lingered something sharper, fear trying to hide behind arrogance. My lord, Caldwell began, smooth as oil. I was told you were dead, Simon supplied, and the word carried no weakness, only a quiet cruelty. Yes, many were eager to be told. Caldwell's throat bobbed. He forced a smile that did not reach his eyes. I assure you, Your Grace, any rumour of... Simon lifted a hand, and the room obeyed the gesture like it was scripture. I don't want assurances, he said. I want the truth you believed you could bury with me. Caldwell's gaze flicked to Lady Bramwell, to the cousin, to the steward, searching for alliance. He found only tight faces and carefully controlled silence. When no one spoke for him, his pride rose like a shield. You accuse me without proof, Caldwell said. On the word of a maid. Jane's mouth curved, not in amusement, but in contempt. You keep saying Maid as if it's an insult, she replied. It only proves you've never understood what hunger teaches. Caldwell's eyes narrowed. Stay in your place. Jane stepped forward, chin lifted, voice calm enough to be deadly. My place is wherever the truth is, she said, and it's choking you. Simon watched the exchange with a stillness that made the air feel colder. Then he spoke, and his voice cut through their tension like a blade through silk. The vial, he said, the one sealed with my crest. Explain it. Caldwell's expression held for half a heartbeat, then slipped. I don't know what you mean. Simon's gaze did not change, but something behind it sharpened. Strange, he murmured. Because you commissioned the seal. Lady Bramwell inhaled sharply, outraged. This is slander. Quiet, Simon said, and the single word crushed her protest. A duke's command had always been absolute. Tonight, it tasted like punishment. Caldwell laughed. Brittle. You're unwell. You're confused. Trauma does that. Jane leaned in slightly, eyes bright as a storm. Then why did your hands shake when I mentioned the crest? She asked softly. Caldwell's fingers curled at his side, an involuntary clench. He noticed too late. His face tightened, and the smoothness fell away, revealing the uglier thing beneath, resentment. I did what was necessary, he snapped, the mask gone. Do you know what it is to live under a man like you? To watch you decide who eats and who starves with a glance? Simon's mouth barely moved. Yes, he said. I know exactly. That's why you tried to make me convenient. Caldwell's chest rose and fell fast. The room felt suddenly smaller, as if the walls leaned in to listen. You would have destroyed me, Caldwell hissed. So I acted first. A confession dressed as justification. The cousin shifted, pale now, scandal curdling into terror. Lady Bramwell's lips parted, and for once, no words came. Only the realization that her careful quiet had been standing beside murder. Simon's eyes moved over them all, slow and merciless. Get him out of my house, he said, and send word to the magistrate. I want this done publicly. Caldwell's face contorted. You can't. I can, Simon replied, voice low. Absolute. And I will. Hands seized Caldwell. He struggled, cursing, trying to drag dignity back onto himself as he was pulled away. The door swallowed his noise, leaving a silence that rang. In that quiet, Simon's gaze found Jane again. The cold mask returned for the others, but it fractured at the edges when it touched her. His voice softened by a fraction, no more than a breath. You stayed, he said. Jane's eyes held his, unbowed. I didn't, she corrected. I fought. Something like gratitude tried to rise in his expression and was crushed by pride, by habit, by the lifelong instinct to never be seen needing anything. Yet his hand lifted, slow with weakness, and his fingers brushed hers, an intimate surrender he would never permit an audience to name. Lady Bramwell's voice returned, thin and sharp with panic. This is ruin. The whispers. Let them whisper, Jane said, turning her head without looking away from Simon. Whispers are the only power cowards have. Simon's gaze tightened, and for a moment the room saw the Duke of Ashford, not as a patient, not as a victim, but as the returning storm. Everyone out, he said. One by one, they withdrew, offended and frightened, dragging their perfume and their etiquette into the corridor like cloaks. When the last footstep faded, the chamber held only two truths: his survival and her refusal to be erased. Simon's voice came quieter, rough with exhaustion. Tell me your terms, he said at last. Jane's expression did not soften. No secrets, she replied. No chains. No pretending I'm less so you can feel more. His eyes searched her face, ice meeting fire, and the crack in his mask widened. just enough to let something human breathe. "And if the world tears you apart for it?" he asked. Jane's answer was steady as a vow. "Then let it bleed trying."